Hey guys, welcome to your first set of notes here for chapter 27. We're going to be talking plant tissues. When you think tissues, you think about like in humans, for example, we have epithelial tissues, connective tissues, muscular tissues, nervous tissues, and those tissues are all made up of cells that are shaped a little differently. They do different jobs and they work together differently, and then those tissues work together to make up organs and organ systems that do specific jobs to keep the organism alive. Well, plants have the same thing, and it's not necessarily as exciting as maybe a nerve cell making up nervous tissue, but they are very, very important, and we are very dependent upon them. So we're going to look at plant tissues and a little bit about how we classify major groups of plants in this chapter. It's going to be pretty quick and pretty easy, and if you took botany with me, it's going to be no problem at all. So we talk about carbon dioxide right away in this chapter because we're real worried about that. Humans release carbon dioxide in the atmosphere by burning fossil fuels, gasoline and that kind of stuff, and other plant-derived materials, coal, wood, that sort of business. And the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere is increasing, and from the data we have, it appears to be increasing exponentially to a point that's higher than we ever had in recorded history. And so we're a little bit worried about that because of what that could possibly do to our global climate. So carbon offsets are like these financial systems that try to reduce the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. They can be, take the form of tax breaks that are for companies that are working with, renewable energies, or they could be for preserving land and plants that are good at absorbing carbon dioxide, things of that nature to try to make an impact globally on the environment. And plants are very important with this job because plants, you guys know, absorb CO2. They bring carbon dioxide gas into their tissues and they turn that into sugars via photosynthesis, and then they lock that CO2 gas up in the form, they take that carbon and turn it into a sugar, so they keep all that carbon as a sugar for a very, very long time. And of course, your book gives you the example of sequoias, and some of those trees can be, 2,000 years old, and the amount of carbon that a 2,000-year-old sequoia tree could hold would be massive, just insane volumes of carbon. And so, by leaving these forests healthy and growing, then they are absorbing a lot of carbon, and they are really to our benefit there. So there's your sequoia tree with the people climbing it. The carbon locked up in the giant sequoia. If it's in the tree, it's not in the atmosphere, so it can stay there for centuries. Okay, so if you look at a plant, we can kind of look at the different regions of the plant and some terms you're going to want to know. This is ground level. Everything below the ground level is a root system. Everything above ground level is a shoot system. So we'll look at the roots. Now this one here has a taproot, so you know it's a dicot. That's one main root that digs down in the ground with little lateral roots that branch off. And so we can call that one big root the primary root, and the ones that branch off are the lateral roots, and these little guys here are root hairs, which are primarily just near the root tip, and root hairs increase the surface area available for absorption. That's kind of their purpose. And then the root tip has a little clear root cap on it, and that allows it's like kind of a mucus sort of membrane that allows it to moisten the soil as the root kind of works its way down in the soil, but probably more importantly, it protects the root apical meristem. You have a ram and a SAM. The root apical meristem is a little region of actively dividing cells at the bottom of the root that grows deeper and deeper and deeper, and the SAM, the shoot apical meristem, is the part of the plant that grows taller and taller and taller. So you cut that off, that's the end height that tomato plant's going to reach because it'll lose that apical meristem. So that's your root system. Now above this is the shoot system. All the tissue in the plant that's not conducting water, the majority of the plant body, is ground tissue. And ground tissue just means it's not dermal tissue, which is the epidermis or the skin. It's not vascular tissue. Vascular tissue moves water and sugars. And then it's ground tissue, support, that kind of stuff. So ground tissue makes up the bulk of it. These little lines indicate vascular tissues, which are xylem and phloem. Xylem pumps the water, phloem pumps the sugar, and those two tend to run pretty close together. They branch off into the leaves, as you can see. What we call leaf veins are actually vascular bundles of xylem and phloem that go out throughout the leaves. And then they also branch out feeding the fruits, which are the ripened ovaries of flowers. If the plant has branches that come off, this works for woody twigs or leafy branches, whatever, you call these a node. A node is the region of the stem where a new branch comes off of the main stem. And so you have a node, the leaf comes off, a node, the leaf comes off. So this is an alternate design. We have alternate branching. You have one branch here, one branch here, one branch here, one branch here. If it were opposite, you'd have a branch and a branch opposite of each other, a branch and a branch opposite of each other. Angiosperms, or flowering plants, are going to have flowers, normally towards the top of the plant. It's easy for pollinators to see them that way. And there are lateral buds, which will grow into stems moving laterally, but they don't grow out until the apical stem is taller than they are. That's called apical dominance, and plants regulate that via hormones. So hopefully that's enough knowledge for one picture. Most plants consist of roots and shoots. Roots are below ground, no duh. They absorb water and dissolve minerals. They store food, and they support the plant, keep the plant from blowing away in the wind, stuff like that. Shoots are above the ground, no duh. The stems provide support, so they hold the plant up from tipping over, no kidding. Leaves do photosynthesis. They take the sunlight, they make the sugar. We like that. And flowers are specialized organs of the plant that serve the purpose of reproduction. Some plants have male and female flowers. Some plants have perfect flowers that are both male and female, and some plants just have male flowers and have to depend on a completely separate plant for a female flower. The plant parts consist of really the same tissues, just they can be arranged a little differently in different types of plants. There's ground tissues, which is most of the plant, just support. Vascular tissue, that's your xylem and phloem that's moving water and sugars. And then dermal tissues, think like in a human, your skin is your epidermis. The dermal tissues is like the plant's skin. You know, it covers and protects the plant surfaces. And some of these can have waxy cuticles on them, or they can be, you know, diversified in all sorts of different structures, but every plant has some sort of covering that protects it from the outside world. And so here, if you take a little leaf, cut it in cross section, you can see you've got the upper epidermis right here, the lower epidermis, which really is not very clear in this picture. You have vascular tissues or vascular bundles running through, and then you have ground tissues, which are all these different cells that are taking up that space and water, and some of them appear to be photosynthetic. They're pretty green, and some of them are just taking up a bunch of space here that are a little larger white cells. So if you want to cut a plant leaf, or even the trunk of a tree into different sections that will show you different things about your plant, one is radial. Radial is that this is the stem of the plant growing up. You cut this slice out of the cylinder. That'll give you one view. Tangential is you go 90 degrees to radial. That'll give you a very different view of the plant. So a lot of times you'll see this is used in wood for like hardwood floors or tables, because it gives you a really cool view of the xylem rings. You get kind of a side view of them. And then the most common that you're going to see is transverse, which is like if you cut the tree down and you look down the tree. That's what you would see for tree rings that way. So there's several different ways to cut these. Then we're going to talk monocots and eudicots. Eudicots is the word for dicot. Eudicot and dicot, they're really the same thing. And what it comes down to is seed leaves. Monocots, mono is one. It has one cotyledon. That's where you get monocot, one cotyledon. And a cotyledon is a seed leaf, embryonic seed leaf. Dicots have two seed leaves. Di is two, cot is cotyledon. So differences in monocots and dicots is the way their tissues are organized. Their stems look different in cross-section. Their roots look different in cross-section. And their stems and roots also look different at the macroscopic level, just from the naked eye. They look different. The number of cotyledons is one way to tell. That's the seed leaves. But there are many other ways to tell. Examples of monocots include lilies, orchids, grasses, and palm trees. And dicots are shrubs, trees, vines, tomatoes, dandelions. So the way you want to know if it's monocot or dicot is monocots are going to have parallel leaf venation, and so I'm not very good at drawing with the whole laptop here, but here, like if this is the leaf of like a blade of grass, the veins of the leaf run parallel with each other, so they run down the grass blade without much in the way of intersecting or branching, right? When it comes to a eudicot, their leaf might look more like this, where the leaf comes out and there's a vascular bundle that runs out of this leaf, and then it branches all over the place to get the water and sugar to different parts of the leaf. And so branching or reticulated vascular bundles is a dicot thing. Parallel venation is a monocot thing. The roots on monocots are going to be fibrous roots, so below the ground it's going to be like grasses where roots just kind of grow everywhere, or onions. If you've ever picked an onion, the roots are just going crazy. Whereas dicots, they're going to have like a main taproot, like a carrot. And then the carrot has like little lateral roots that might branch off. And so there's lots of different ways to tell the differences between monocots and dicots, but those are just a few ways to tell. Here you have their flowers, which can be really helpful. This is the dicot and the monocot. The dicot has 2 seed leaves coming up here. The monocot has 1, and you can see it's just plant like a corn kernel. It'll take like 7 days, and you can see this. It's very easy. Corn's a monocot. If they make flowers, the flowering parts of a dicot occur in 4s or 5s. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 flower petals, dicot. If they occur in 3s, they're a monocot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's a monocot. As long as you don't have 15 flower petals, you're probably going to be fine. Here we have leaf veins. The leaf veins here, you can see how they branch just everywhere. That's a dicot leaf. These leaf veins are parallel, like grass. That's a monocot leaf. Here's your pollen grain for a dicot. Again, we don't want 3s if we're in dicots. So 3 pores or furrows is 1, 2, 3, and then only 1 single pore in the monocot. So that's the one exception to the dicots not having 3s, because they don't want 3. You don't want 3 stigmas, or you don't want 3 anthers. You don't want 3 petals if you're a dicot. The only thing you get that is in a pollen grain, but you can't really see those with the naked eye anyways. If you cut the stem in half and you look down it with a microscope, a dicot has these nice circular rings of vascular tissue, which is their xylem and phloem, occurs in a ring. Monocot, it's just scattered. There's like little monkey faces just scattered in here. And so that's another way to tell, but that takes a microscope. So with our plant tissues, they consist of 1 cell type, just like I said earlier, epithelial tissues in humans are just epithelial cells. Nervous tissues in humans are just nerve cells. Simple plant tissues are 1 cell type. Parenchyma tissues are made of parenchyma cells. Collenchyma tissues are made of collenchyma cells. And sclerenchyma tissues are made of sclerenchyma cells. They're tough to say, they're tough to spell, but those are plant tissues. If we start to put multiple types of tissues together, we can make a complex plant tissue, which is 2 or more different cell types. Dermal tissues are a complex plant tissue, and vascular tissues like xylem and phloem have multiple cell types, and they're also a complex plant tissue. So we're going to take a look at these simple tissues, and then we will call it a video there, because I think we're probably running pretty close to that 20-minute mark. So parenchyma is made of parenchyma cells. No kidding, they do lots of different jobs. Photosynthesis is one, storage, secretion, tissue repair, those sorts of things. They have a pretty thin, flexible cell wall, and they're going to make up most of your ground tissue. They can store a lot of starch and oils for plants to have energy for later, because that's what they do with that sugar they make from photosynthesis, is they make it into something complex for storage later. And you'll find them in the mesophyll of leaves, which we'll look at a little bit later. But if you cut a leaf in half, the middle is called the mesophyll, and it does a lot of photosynthesis. So that's where you find parenchyma cells. So just remember P, photosynthesis, it works, for parenchyma. Collenchyma tissues are comprised of collenchyma cells, of course. They're pretty flexible, and you're going to find them in the parts of the plant that are growing fast and need to stretch fast. Collenchyma is a good fit there. The weird thing about collenchyma cells is almost all of them will stay alive when they're adults, and that's really odd, because a lot of these tissues are going to die as adults and they're going to be replaced by new types of tissues, but collenchyma stays alive the whole time. And so that's pretty neat. And then there's sclerenchyma tissues, which can be composed of a couple different things. They could be fibers, or they could be sclerids, and these are basically really tough structures. They're stronger than the other types of tissues because of primarily 2 molecules, cellulose and lignin, and those 2 things combined give them a really, really tough cell wall. And so they can strengthen seed coats, they can make pears gritty tasting, they can support stems, they can do a variety of different jobs. So we're going to shut it down there, because I think we're close to about the average attention span. And that's nothing against you, that's just honesty. It's hard to watch a video for too terribly long. So we'll pick it up with simple tissues next time. Thanks for your time.